Welcome back, Life Sciences. I hope you had a little bit of a small break and maybe you could have checked out the plants around you, all right, see if you could see any of the characteristics, or maybe you went to your potatoes if you had them there to see if they were growing eyes. Right, now as I said to you, one of the concepts we must look at is what are the advantages, all right, and disadvantages of asexual reproduction. So let's have a look at the different points. Right, guys, we're looking at first, remember you need to have your farmer's hat on, if I could use that, or you're a crop grower. We're looking at the advantages. Why would it be, right, an advantage to grow my crops asexually? Now, when we look at it, the section that we're going to look at, all right, after this, we're going to look at the concept of a flower. Right, now you need to look at this whole concept, all right, as energy. Now, what do I mean by that is, the advantages of asexual reproduction, they don't have to make a flower. Making it give energy, all right? Now we need another thing. What I don't have, all right, is pollinators. If I don't have a flower, what do I not need? I don't need the bees, I don't need butterflies, I don't need birds, I don't need, I'm taking the middleman, if I was to use that, out of the equation. So it's actually, for the plants, it saves them a lot of energy, right? Having no flower, not having to make the pollen, right? Because remember what we said? Pollen was the male part, and the flower is the sexual reproductive organ. So we're taking them out the equation, right? But what does that mean for us? It means quick. Right, guys, it's quick. Right, I don't have to rely on all of those things. I don't have to find a partner. Right, I don't have to rely on the pollinators of taking it from the male to the female. The one parent can do it. It's quick, right? It's cheap, it's simpler. Why do you think grass is grass? Why do we use it for our lawns? Very simply, we buy them on the street corner, and grass is actually quite cheap. We lay them down, right, and what happens? All those little runners go, and soon our garden, all right, is full of grass. And I have the battle of the weeds as well, but it's a quick and it's a simple and it's a cheap method. Okay, now we're getting into a concept that you're going to look at much later when you do more of DNA, etc., when you do grade 12 work, etc. But this is called, it's genetically identical. Now what that means is, remember we said we made a clone. And a clone means I know what I'm getting year after year after year. So remember, it's all about this predictability. Now, when things are genetically, all right, identical, this is good when conditions are stable. What I'm talking about now is the environment is stable. If so, for example, we got global warming coming or something changes, the environment changes, okay, that is an unstable environment, and that we're going to look at as a disadvantage. Because it's got the same genes, it might not adapt. But if it's the same environment year after year after year, I'm going to produce the same thing, the same predictability, if that is what I want. Remember, what do I want? So what happens here then, all right, is that if a change does occur, and this word here is a favorable mutation, if maybe by some chance during mitosis something goes wrong, but it's a good something goes wrong, that mutation, all right, is going to be passed on very quickly. Because why? Process of mitosis. It's going to start making identical copies with that really good trait. But that is going to lead us, all right, to, when we look at our disadvantages, we're going to look at something else. Guys, now as well, the concept. Asexual reproduction does not give rise to a seed. And seeds can lie dormant, or they might need ideal conditions, or they might grow in seasons. And this means, okay, that if we don't have any seeds, we can grow. Propagate means to grow the whole year round. Do you see it? These are called hydroponics or tunnels. And a lot of our food, a lot of our fruits, you guys are quite young. My age, when I was growing up, we only had certain fruit in certain seasons because that is when they grew. But now with asexual reproduction, without that seed, you actually can see, and putting them in tunnels, taking a bit of the environment away, the seasons away, you can actually grow certain things the whole year, right? Seasonal. So you're going to make money on those things the whole year. You have strawberries usually the whole year. You might even have oranges, etc. The whole year. When I was growing up, we only had them during the winter. Now, if we have a look at the disadvantages basically go about this no genetic variation. Because it's the same thing, if the environment changes, they won't have the genes to be able to adapt. It's one of the things that we look at when you're going to look at evolution. Evolution relies on this concept of mutation, of change. But mitosis, cloning, there is no change. It's the same thing. Right? So the problem is, if you're going to have that, and if the environment does change, the plants might not be able to adapt, and they could die out. Okay, so that's exactly what will happen. On the same line, again, if there's a strong gene, they'll pass it on. Unfortunately, if there is a weak gene, if the plant, sometimes you'll see one of the things is brown specks on the leaves. That's not a good thing for the leaves. That can be passed on. So yes, there are more advantages than disadvantages, but in the long run, what are you looking for? Okay, let's now look at the concept of sexual reproduction, right? And if we break down the word, right, when we talk about sex, what are we talking about? Quite simply, all right, is there is usually two individuals involved. So you need two partners, all right, two parents. And this, when we get to plants, all right, involves gametes. So we're going to have a male, as we said, is a pollen grain. And we're going to have an ovule, which is the female egg. Right, be very careful that you say ovule, because sometimes when you use another word for humans, we use ovum, and they're different things. Guys, this is where we do not have predictability. When you've got a male and when you've got a female, you have no idea when you combine the two what you are going to get. It is a surprise. And because they are different, all right, what could happen is that surprise could hold something really good and new, or maybe not so much. Now I want to show you, you're going to look at the flower later, but the whole concept of sexual reproduction is this. This is the male, and it's going to produce pollen. It's the anther. This is the female, and this is the ovule. All right? And what happens during reproduction is the male lands over here, right? He moves all the way, and fertilization occurs. So it's a big process. But the end result of sexual reproduction is this concept of a seed. And what information, what genetic information is in that seed that comes from the male and what comes from the female? Okay. So when it comes to sexual reproduction, we don't know what we're going to get. What's in the male, what genetic material is pollen, what is in the female. And when those two fertilize, what is going to come out in the seed? What is the plant? Is there something new? Is there not something new? Is there a trait maybe that makes it more resilient? Is it a good trait? Is it maybe resistant to insects? An insect doesn't come. So that's what we look at when we look at sexual reproduction. All right, so what are our advantages? Now, guys, the advantages are mostly about this concept of genetic variation. When we have genetic variation, we can get something new. And what does that mean? Very simply, maybe the plant is resistant to a disease, okay? It brings in something new. Or when the environments are changed, because it's got something new, it stands a really good chance to survive in these different, situations. Also, when we're looking at, bringing in something new, maybe the plant did have a harmful mutation, but as soon as you bring in a male and a female, you're not reliant on just the one. It's quite possible that that harmful mutation we can eradicate. We don't pass it on, and it's gone. Whereas in mitosis, we definitely, and asexual reproduction, we're definitely going to pass that on. Now, guys, the end result of sexual reproduction is a seed, right? And a seed has got a lot of advantages. Number one, it can lie dormant, right? So it's got a seed coat, it's got a protective covering, and it can actually not do anything until it's really necessary. Sometimes hundreds, thousands of years, believe it or not. But what can we do with the seed? If you noticed in asexual reproduction, the potatoes, it must produce a new plant right by it. When it comes to sexual reproduction, we've got this concept of a seed. Have a look here. Here a bird's going to eat a fruit, and the seed is in here. The bird's going to fly away, and that seed's going to be dispersed a long distance. Have a look at this dandelion over here. This is the seed, guys. This is a seed. And what's going to take it? The wind is going to take it, and it's going to blow it a long distance away. So when it comes to sexual reproduction, the offspring can actually go really, really far away from the parents, where there might be more space, there might be more water, more sunlight, maybe not so crowded. The conditions are ideal for that plant then to grow. Okay, so what would be the disadvantages? Okay, so what would be the things, the cons? Now, as I said to you, the plants, when it comes to producing sexually, they have to produce a flower. And with that flower, they're going to produce pollen, and it needs a lot of energy, all right? It's slower, it's time-consuming. You need pollinators, so you can't use insect spray, because then you're going to kill the insects along with the things that you really need. Okay, and yes, we could pass on unfavorable genes, but as I said to you, when you're looking at the concepts, what do you want? Do you want something predictable, or do you want something new? It all depends on what we're looking at. And very often when we're looking at food security, being able farmers to feed our country, lots of times maybe asexual reproduction might benefit because we know what we're going to get. But playing around with sexual reproduction, right, getting to see the genes, might be able to get something new that could be to the farmer's benefit. Okay, guys, we're going to have a quick break, and we'll be right back just in a bit.